We have Tavi this evening from St. Augustine Cathedral. We can see that as long as we're in this world, the devil wants to take us away from God. He doesn't come in ways that we may suspect. He comes through the things we love. He comes at the time of need. He comes when we will not be able to see his malice. That's what the Bible says. Connect with God so that you can test every spirit. You can always know what is of God and what is not of God. But as the Bible says, even Lucifer shows himself as an angel of light. He comes in a way you will not suspect. He comes in a way you will welcome him. And in fact, not just welcome him, but give him a special place because he comes handy. But the Bible says what he aims at doing is like a thief, to kill, to steal, to kill, and to destroy.
This is from Matthew 4, chapter 4, verses 1 to 11.
Yeah.
The temptation of Jesus. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And he fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command those stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will give his angels charge of you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, you shall not tempt the Lord your God." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he said to him, "All these I will give you, and if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Begone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him.
Good. Thank you very much. And so, just as a way of introduction, you will see something here. You will see that the Bible says Jesus fasted 40 days. And you know what that means. He was very, very hungry. The devil comes not in any other way, but the devil identifies what Jesus needs more than anything else is food. And so he packaged his evil as something good. This is what you need. And this is just one thing you need. And that is the manner the devil comes. If a person does not allow God to open their eyes, how would you know that there is evil in this good thing, in this friendship, in this goodness, this goodwill the devil seems to be offering? You can hear why Jesus will say, "Cut off from me." You cannot do this. You cannot identify him. Secondly, you will see again, Jesus, before the second point, you hear Jesus will quote the scriptures, because the Bible says we should use this as a weapon, as a sword against the evil one. Anyway, So the devil comes again and takes him up, to a high mountain, show him everything, anywhere. And then he said, knowing that Jesus has the power to do everything, he said, jump. And God says he'll take care of you. Of course, Jesus is aware God is faithful. God does not lie. But Jesus knows. And he says, it is, why do you put God to the test? Even though God can do this. Anyway, there too, Jesus is aware of the malice in it. Remember, the devil used the Bible. So normally a person can say, oh, are they not using the Bible? It is one Bible. That's sometimes what we say. They are preaching love. They are preaching this. Brothers and sisters, if you do not depend on Christ, you will not understand, or you will not see the evil he brings, because he uses the scriptures to make Jesus know, if I am not from God, why would I identify with the scriptures? And the devil used the scripture correctly. He showed him the glory. Remember, he will always bring what we like. And that's why I say he comes through our fantasies. And then again, he says, I'll give you the whole world, the glories of the world. You'll have this, you'll have that, you'll have this. Everything will be named after you. Only if you worship me. And Jesus says, it is written again. So this is just to help us understand that don't ever deceive yourself or be asleep, thinking it is when you don't identify the devil by sight. That's why the Bible says, the righteous walk not by sight, but by faith. And connecting with Jesus is key. And so it's very important for us to know there are many things we may be identifying with, toying with, playing with. Sometimes we think it's entertainment, sometimes curiosity, sometimes this and that, and we will not be able to identify harm in these things. But be careful.
I met Father Simon, of course, through God, maybe a month ago. And I think my first question to him was like, Father, why don't we talk about hell in church? And then that's what led us to have a connection. And as I'm listening to Father speak in the introduction, I can't even put into words how true every single thing that was said is. And unfortunately, I know this from personal experience. So I'll give you a little background on me. And of course, the topic is spiritual warfare. And I speak to everyone that I come across about it because it's so hidden in plain view. And like I said, unfortunately, I have too much experience with the devil, but it's a grace because now that I know him, I know how when Jesus says he's the truth, the way, and the life, there's nothing true has ever been said. So a little bit about me is I had a sort of a Buddhist upbringing. And so that, of course, I grew up believing in reincarnation and karma and all that. And but I wouldn't call myself a Buddhist. I was more like my parents' religions, but I just always understood that. And then I had a little bit of a Baptist exposure as a child, a very young child. And we stopped going to church when I was like 8 or 10. And I remember I wanted nothing to do with baptism or anything like that. I really wasn't drawn to Christianity. And pretty much sought out a spiritual path that I would say is the new religion, and that's the New Age movement. And the New Age movement, for those that aren't familiar, it's sort of a hodgepodge of all beliefs. It mixes Christianity. There's acknowledgement of Jesus, but they refer to him as an ascended master, pretty much a great teacher, archangels, a lot of Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, Hinduism, and then Native American spiritualism. And then, the whole thing with like crystals and manifesting and all that. And pretty much from every culture and civilization throughout history, it's just a mixture of that. So, it's very big and it's very alarming to me. I see it, especially with the younger people, but every age group is into it. And I would know because, long story short, following this path, this spiritual new age path, eventually, as an adult, I started to have gifts. And I thought they were gifts from God. I would start to have dreams that were prophetic, and then so as my occult knowledge sort of expanded, that went to other life forms, other planets, other realms, other beings, and I started having experiences with all those things. There's even like the near-death experiencer community, and I'm so alarmed because I see this in the church. People refer to what people have experienced in near-death experience, and they accept that as truth. Like that's a glimpse into the afterlife, and so they'll take that as truth. And out-of-body experiences, I had all those, and then these quote unquote gifts just dropped into my lap one day because I was following this path, and all of a sudden I was able to channel. And when I did that, there were other beings, and I was receiving a lot of information, and I was getting what I would say would be channeling something called energy work. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. That's a big thing now. Reiki, Tai Chi, energy healing. I didn't even know what those things really were. It was these spiritual beings that started coming to me that taught me this themselves. And they started teaching me about past ancient Egyptian knowledge, and I was having so many supernatural experiences, but I kind of kept it to myself for a year because I didn't even understand it myself. But it was actually completely fascinating. It's just like Father said, you don't want to go by these experiences, you want to go by faith. And so I started having all these supernatural experiences, and these beings that I was coming across were doing energy work on me, and it was healing because I had a troubled and traumatic background, and so they offered healing, and it felt nice. Plus, so long story short, I wondered after a year if this energy work would work on other people besides myself. So I just kind of practice on family and friends, and I had no idea what to expect, but I would start channeling energy work on them, and one by one, every single one of them were having these incredible experiences. When I was working on them, they would have visions, they would see angels, they would see other spiritual beings, they'd see beautiful sceneries in nature, as if they left their body and were placed in, on top of a beautiful mountain or in a meadow or a field with like golden wheat fields. They would feel like electric shocks, and that they described as pleasant, like something like acupuncture. And they would receive messages, and it looked so good and it felt so good. It never ever crossed my mind that it was evil or that my gifts were not actually from God, which is what I was thought they were, that they were from the devil. And so I just loved it, honestly. It was so interesting. And I was every day something new I was learning. And so I was like, well, I wonder what it right now I'm only working on people that I know. I wonder what it would be like to work with people I don't know. They're strangers to me. Would it work? And so I set up shop and I had clients who were strangers to me, but again, like they were all having these incredible experiences in our sessions. And then eventually I would just start to know things about them that I couldn't possibly know because they were strangers to me. And everything was accurate. So I was becoming an energy healer and a reader. And that included psychic abilities, mediumship, pretty much anything that was out there, I was all of a sudden able to do. And it was helpful to people. And so I thought I was doing good work. And so eventually I came to have a real relationship with a particular spirit that was so beautiful. She was a Native American elderly woman. And she, even though she was elderly, she was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And I would see her in front of these red mountains that you would see like in Utah. And I came to understand that she was my spirit guide, which is a huge term in the New Age. We have spirit guides that help guide us through life, and they have some sort of connection to us somehow. And a lot of times they were ancestors or really specifically past life family members. And I came to understand that she was my mother in a past life, and we were both Native American healers. And I'm not Native American, I'm Asian, but ever since I was a child, I was drawn to Native American culture. And so to me, that made sense and felt good and just made me embrace it all that much more. And I had a troubled relationship with my own mother. I always felt like I didn't have a mom. So for her to come, this beautiful Native American healer to be my mother and my spirit guide, and her guidance was beautiful. She's so nurturing and loving and like protective. I remember one time I was just laying on the couch and I could sense something coming near me, and all of a sudden I saw her hand shoot out above, right over my head. She pushed away whatever was coming near me. So to feel protected and safe and to have a mother finally, I just ran to her. And so I would tune into her, I'd talk to her all the time. She would give me so much, just like a mother, guidance, advice, and that I became so trusting of these spiritual beings that were around me that I didn't realize the red flags or of some of the things that they would suggest or their guidance would lead me. It wasn't until years later that I was seeing what was really happening. The devil is very smart, very, very smart. He's not going to come attacking people like a monster. He knows that would send people running to Jesus, which is the last thing he wants. So he will give people whatever is soothing and good and comforting and enjoyable to them. And that is sort of the alarming thing about something that's very popular now is called The Secret. There's a book, that documentary on Netflix. It's about your thoughts create your reality, and it works. Like, to an extent, people will put it out there to the universe. That's what they call God now, the universe. Whatever you put out there, you will get. And it's like the law of attraction. And that's the devil's MO. He can deliver on a lot of things. He can't deliver on everything, but and he doesn't want to anyway, but he'll give you enough to lure you away and to gain your trust and to keep you enticed. But all of that is demonic. So I'm not sure if people are aware of that, because everything he does seems very good and harmless and actually beneficial. So I grew up in Ohio. I'm not from Arizona, but it just, what I would call intuition became so strong, and I just had this guidance that was so spot on, and I knew that I would be leaving Ohio and to move to Arizona on a whim, and I wasn't even sure why, but to me, it felt like to reconnect with my Native American past life, especially in the Southwest, because I saw her, I always see these red mountains, and I could see even my husband from a past life, and that Native American past life, and he was beautiful. And it was, it was like supposed to be reconnecting with family. And I'm not the only one that saw him. Like, when you're in the new age, your circle of friends will always become new agers. Also, all of them have their own quote unquote gifts, and we would validate each other. And I talked to this lady who didn't even know me. She was in Florida, and we talked on the phone, but she was a psychic with an incredible reputation for accuracy. And she told me, without me saying anything, she said, "You're a healer. You've had so many Native American past lives. You're and she laid it all out. She saw exactly what I saw. She's like, your main spirit guide is this Native American woman healer, and she's incredible, and you are her daughter." And then my other friend, Josh, who's also a new age healer and reader, he would say the same thing to me. He's like, your past life mom keeps coming to me and giving me messages for you. And we all thought that was wonderful. So when psychics validate each other, I don't know if anyone's ever had a reading, and you go to multiple psychics, and a lot of them will kind of overlap in what information they give you. And it's not because that information is truth. It's because the demons are feeding every one of us the same lies. And like when I worked on a young man. He was my client. He came in for energy healing session. And he told me, he's like, halfway through that session, you disappeared. And there was this beautiful Native American woman standing over me, like smiling, and like how nice it felt. And so that's how scary it is and how powerful they are. And so I was getting, I was a few years into it, just very deep. But I also was aware that there was a good and a dark. And I thought like the spiritual beings around me were good. And I saw angels. They said they were archangels. And but I was also getting attacked by because in the new age, we don't believe in hell or Satan in the biblical sense. We just say there's light beings and then shadow beings, and we see that in ourselves. And we're like, well, we all have a light aspect and shadow aspect. You'll never name it as sin. That's not acknowledged. Everything's for a learning purpose. You came into this life with a soul plan, these soul contracts with other people, and you're going to meet them, and you're going to accomplish something through your interaction that was already predetermined, predestined before you were born. So again, God's not in the picture. Everything's about you. You planned your life, you create your life, and you will get out of the reincarnation cycle by your own works and balancing karma. And so God's not part of the picture. And 666 is the sign of the devil, because he created, man like on the sixth day. So the Holy Trinity is the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. But 666 is man, the unholy Trinity. And that's, that was the first lie that he ever told, the first humans was, you have this knowledge, you're perfectly entitled to this knowledge. You have it within you, and God doesn't want you to have it. And he's been telling that same lie to this very second that we're talking now, and people keep falling for it. It's a recycled lie, and he repackages it. Babylonian, Egyptian occultism, and those ancient civilizations, they look to the stars. They build that Tower of Babel. So there's the astrology, the horoscope. Now the new religion that he created, and he created like Buddhism and Hinduism. Again, it's about enlightenment. You find enlightenment, and now I look back on it, like, what does that even mean? The goal is to be self-aware, completely self-aware, and self-empowered and enlightened. Again, that takes God completely out of the equation. And so the New Age is, the exact same thing. I don't, now looking back, I'm like, it's so silly that we keep falling for the same lie, but that's how good he is. He's so, like, it's funny because the demons, they give you the problem and they give you the solution at the same time. And now I see that years later, with health problems, any problem, they can affect that, your finances, your relationship, your health, your work, all that. And they cause the problems because they want you to seek out an alternative method. And they're the ones that are giving you that alternative method. So there's a lot of that alternative healing, the energy, the acupuncture, all that. And so when they oppress a person, so I've seen this, in my own life, and then with other people plus clients, they cause the issue in the first place. It causes that person to seek out like a practitioner like myself. And then when the session's going on, the demons let go of the oppression, so you do feel better, and then they'll give you these beautiful experiences. So you're going to attribute that to the gifts of the practitioner and the validity of the modality, not realizing the demons are controlling the whole thing all along. Whatever gets you away from God or any sort of dependence on God is what they do, but they're just so good at it. And so we're completely blind to that. And I was, and honestly, I let them lead me to my death. That's where I was going. My health, was deteriorating, and so much that I was not able to work for months. And I went to the doctor multiple times, and he tested me for anything and everything, and I was fine. Like on paper, I was a picture of health. So there's nothing that the doctor could even do. He, it's just, we'll just continue to monitor, was, his only answer for me. But I just knew like something was so wrong, that as bad as I was feeling, like my energy level just completely was zapped. I was spending like 20 hours a day in bed, and I had no idea what was going on. And so, my spirit guides, they gave me like some solutions that really actually were helpful for a little. They suggested yoga. And so that's how I know yoga is evil, because if a demon's suggesting it, then it's evil. Then when I would, in the very beginning of all this, I would channel poses. I would start going into poses, and I recognize them as yoga poses, or like mudras, which is the finger movements that you'll see a lot in Hinduism and Buddhism. Every finger movement or hand movement moves energy around. And they said, they were so loving about it. They said, you need to channel your grief, because I was dealing with a lifetime of grief too. And they said, you need to channel your grief in a creative way, or you're going to really give yourself a health problem. And they suggested painting. And I always was artistic. I just, that's just not anything I really did regularly, and really not since I was a child. And so when I started picking up painting, it was therapeutic, and it did pull me out of a really dark spot. So again, you know, you don't realize their lies, because they do, they give you, you know, the solutions, but the solutions really just put you on a hamster wheel, and that hamster wheel doesn't go just nowhere like an actual hamster wheel. That hamster wheel is putting you, like moving you in circles, like chasing your tail, but it is moving you towards your death, your spiritual death and your physical death too. And I just hit rock bottom, and I knew within myself, I was like, if I keep going this way, I was like, I won't live 10 more years. I was like, there's no way. I'm shutting down by the day. And I just accepted it. And but in the darkest parts of that, I had, about a year and a half ago, I had a vision of the Archangel Gabriel. And it wasn't really a vision, it's more like a meeting, and Mary, Mother Mary. And I was like, as soon, you know, I'd always seen a lot of things, but when I saw them, and it was like, you can't be in the presence of so much holiness and it not affect you. And it was like a different effect. I was like, I never wanted anything to do with Christianity. The New Age is very anti-Christian. And so but as soon as I saw them, I was asking my friend who was raised Catholic to take me to mass. And and when I would go, it just felt like that was right and good. And so so all of a sudden I was interested in Jesus, and I was, for some reason, I was always against Jesus. And I don't know why. I think part of it was because of the church that I went to as a child, just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And but you know, Mary, she leads you to her son. So because of her, I was all of a sudden interested and more open to Jesus. And maybe a few months later, I don't know what it was. I had such a pull towards water. Like, you know, we had a really good monsoon season. And so like the dams where I like to hike was just full of water. And I remember just sitting in the dam and just letting the water like crash over my head. And I had this very clear thought that was, there is not enough water in the world to wash away all the heaviness of life. And I walked out of that dam feeling sad. I was just like, I need to get back to like who I was as when I was a child and happy, a very young child and happy. And it's like, and I would just be always sitting in the dam, and then I would always be like in the swimming pool or taking a bath. And I didn't know why, but that kept going on for a month. And then one night before bed, just feeling so crummy as usual, I was doing my yoga poses like the spirit guide suggested I do before bed. And then, but all of a sudden, Jesus was there in my bedroom, and he put his hand on my forehead and he said, I can heal your brokenness if you let me. And he showed me the baptism pool from my old church. And as a child, when I was only like 8 or 10, I refused to be baptized. I watched my dad and my older sister be baptized, and honestly, I was offended by the whole thing, and I didn't want to do it, and I didn't have to. But when he showed me the baptism pool, like everything in me was like, yes, I want that. And he said, why do you think you've been drawn to water lately? And so now I understand on some level, it's like I was trying to wash myself clean, always being in the water. What I needed was baptism to wash away sin, a lifetime of sin, idolatry, paganism, you know, everything else. but it was baptism that I needed. And when he, and everything in my heart wanted him and wanted what he was offering, because I needed true healing. But, but I still had some reserves. I don't know, because I just didn't know him. So I just said that, I want to accept your offer, but I want to get to know you for who you are, not for who I've been taught and told you were. And he was around me every day after that. And, and I could only hold out for about 3 days before I was just like, okay, fine, I'll follow you. And what made me fall in love with Jesus, what broke my heart, just melt my heart completely, was his humility. I like that humility. It's not of this world, obviously. Like he would kneel in front of me. I'd be sitting in my chair just feeling really crummy, and he would be kneeling, in front of me, and he'd look up at me and just it just with almost like a childlike innocence. And he was so, it's like he was almost, it's like he was asking me to accept his gift as if I was doing him a favor versus him doing me a favor. And I knew what his gift was. And that was, his life and death and resurrection. And I was just speechless. I was just so floored and just so humbled by that. And I just fell in love with him, because I'm like, what little I knew of him at the time, I was like, he's Lord of Lords, like King of Kings, yet he's kneeling in front of me, asking me to accept his gift, like I'm doing him a favor. And that's what just broke my heart wide open. And so so I said yes to Jesus. And the Bible verse that came to me first, that was I wasn't familiar with the Bible at all. But what the verse that came to me was, Father, you might have to help me. Proverbs 3:5-6. It's trust in the Lord with all your heart, to not lean on your own understanding. He will make straight your paths.
Yeah.
I was
Trust
like,
the Lord with all your heart. With all
yeah,
your heart, and lean not on your understanding.
yeah.
He will
And
not let
after,
your foot to be moved. He, will not slumber, all the stuff like that. Yeah.
and that spoke to me, because after a lifetime of leaning on my own understanding, doing it my own way, when I read that, it went straight into my heart. I'm like, yes, like, and that was a complete paradigm shift, because it's a completely foreign concept in the pagan and secular world. You do not lean on God. You lean on yourself and your own abilities and whatever else you want to lean on and believe in, but it's not the true God. And so it was a journey, a beautiful, incredible journey into Catholicism. And I just was immediately, because of Mary, I was drawn to the Catholic faith. And I just knew that that's right. And so when I would go to Mass, whatever I felt to me was correct. Like the reverence shown at Mass, with the kneeling, the bowing, just I was like, that is correct. That's the way it should be. That's the way I see it in my own experiences with Mary and Gabriel and Jesus. That's appropriate, and that's what it's like in heaven. It's just a lot of reverence to God and all things holy. And so I loved being on my knees at Mass and in praise. And so it was just a very long story, and there's just so many details, but so I was developing a good, strong foundation in the faith and with Jesus. And that's when I got attacked by Satan openly. And I think he wasn't in disguise. Him and his minions, they weren't in disguise anymore, because as long as you're following them, they'll appear, like Father said, as angels of light and 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 beautiful beings, whatever form that takes, to speak to a person and gain their trust. But once I was with Jesus and I rejected that, then I just saw them how they actually really are, which is very ugly and scary. And they're creatures, they started off angels, but a life of sin and they're the epitome of it, does change us. And for me, it was affecting me physically too. I think that's why, God had created us to, I believe, to not die, to live forever in our bodies, our physical bodies. But when sin comes in, it kills you. And that's what was happening to me. And I think it changes you, and, it changed their form too. And so, so there was, and then it became very clear to me that there was a spiritual battle going on, and that it's not, it's sort of like, in the yin and yang symbolism, again, another pagan demonic invention, light and dark together. There's dark and light, light and dark. It's balanced, it's whole. And that's not true. You're with Jesus or you're with Satan in all his many different forms and deceptions. You only have two choices, Jesus or Satan. That's it. There's not 20 other good possible options. So yeah, it became very clear to me that there was a full-on battle for my soul, for everybody's soul, but I was front stage and center, seeing the battle that was going on from my soul. And this was just out of love and grace from God, because it was nothing that I did. I was following Satan, and I'm right to my grave, and completely blind. And that's why we need a shepherd. Just like with real sheep, they're so prone to wandering off and getting into danger and being completely unaware. And I think the analogy Jesus uses himself as the good shepherd is perfect, because that's how clueless I was. I was like a sheep that just like, yeah, I'll follow you, to the slaughter. And so, and I'm sure that Satan thought he had me, and I would agree. But Jesus just swooped in, last minute, thankfully. And, he's like, no, she's mine. And I'm so thankful that he opened my heart and my eyes and my mind to him, because unfortunately not everyone answers that call, and I'm so scared for them. And I know so many of these people, and there's a mix. The people that I talk to, a lot of them, thankfully, their hearts and minds have been opened to Jesus, and they left all that sinful paganism behind, and now they're back in the Catholic Church. But then there's those that they're like completely deaf and blind to it, and they're like, no, like we have the answers, like and again, like that's the first lie that Satan told. Like I think that the knowledge of the good and evil, like it's this that you believe that you have this knowledge, understanding, and of how creation works and how life works and why. And that's the thing about New Ageism or other religions, especially Eastern ones, that you have all the answers. I was very solid with Jesus. I think this was a grace, because if he had revealed this too soon, I don't know how I would have handled it. But eventually it was revealed to me, really the true spiritual warfare that's going on, and the portals that open the demonic in a person's life. And the big ones is occultism, whether you realize or not, because I would never, be an active like devil worshiper. There's ones that are just openly, we're devil worshippers, we go to the Church of Satan. And then there's all the other ones that don't realize that they do also, but it's in a deceptive way. And I hate to say it, but when it comes down to it, I was a devil worshiper. And I'm floored, completely floored, because I would never do that willingly, by my, like, my free will choice. But that's what happened. And that's, after a while, God revealed that to me, and I was dumbfounded, completely dumbfounded, how far away from God that I actually was, because I always believed in God. I always loved God, but I just didn't know him, and I was completely misled, and whatever concept I had of God was completely incorrect. And that's what just floored me. I mean, even now, like months and months later, I can't really even comprehend that, like let that sink into my mind, because of the level of deception. And that's why, my first question of Father was like, why don't we talk about hell more? Because a lot of people are choosing that, and I guess ultimately sending themselves to hell. And it's crazy, because they wouldn't sign up for that willingly. Like, where's the small print that says what you're doing is demonic? Like, it's not talked about, it's not written, it's generally speaking not known. So I'm like, that's what just kills me. But that's the Satan. He's the great deceiver. And I was heartbroken too, that to realize that my whole life I was so far away from God, and that I was actually just in in a friendship, in a relationship with demons. And um and so the portals to the demonic are the big main ones are like occultism. Even if you're going to see psychics or mediums, there's a reason why, like, pretty much like every other page in the Bible is condemning divination, spiritualists, consulting the stars, that, not having other gods before me, and not worshiping other gods. And that's not because God is jealous. That's just for our safety and protection, because he knows. So if you're even going, like he says, if you even go consult a spiritualist or a medium or psychic, you're is a grave sin. And I can't speak for God, but I knew I was going straight to hell. That was revealed to me, but Jesus saved me from that. And so like occultism, whether it's openly dark or it's deceptively light, if you're engaging in those things, it's condemned by God, and you're worshiping demons, basically. Another one would be abuse, especially childhood abuse opens portals to the demonic. Addictions of all sorts, addictions, and a life of habitual sin, and even pornography. That's a big one. Like, I got to see a lot of things, and I saw where viewing pornography literally open portals to demons, and they were in that person's environment after that. Those things open portals. Like yoga, there was a reason why these quote unquote spirit guides suggested yoga. It's not an exercise, it's not stretching, although the stretches, honestly, I'll admit they feel good, and they do make you feel good. and, centered and all that. And I'm just appalled. I'm just like, with all the yoga studios are popping up, they're being taught. They wanted, they're bringing it into schools, starting, with children, all demonic agenda. Because if you understand the theology of Hinduism, and Buddhism too, and Native Americans, those are all the beliefs that seem positive and are embraced. And if you understand their philosophies, they work with spirits that are of different worlds, including underworld. Again, nobody names them as demons, so they're just like different spirits in different levels, in different realms. And in yoga, every single posture, and there's hundreds of them, is a salutation to a specific deity. But there are not hundreds of sub gods. Those are demons, and you have chosen to bow down to them. And that is what they created the yoga for. You are bowing down to demons every time you do a yoga pose. And in doing so, choosing to do so with your free will, it opens portals to the demonic. And if you do it, anything long enough, because it takes time for them to, I guess, really oppress and, God forbid, actually possess a person. But if you keep engaging in sinful behavior like that, like the example I used with Father was like a Ouija board. Like if you play with one, for a few times, probably nothing will happen. But keep playing with it, regularly, and start actually investing time and effort into it, and something will happen. And it's the same with these practices like yoga and shamanism. After a while, you're going to start to experience something. And for people who aren't even approaching it in a spiritual way, it's just an exercise, or after doing it for a while, you might start to feel a tingle in your third eye, this forehead area. And what that is you've opened a portal. Just like if you played with the Ouija board, you're going to open a portal in your environment and your life, basically. And if you keep doing practices like yoga or Eastern transcendental meditation, which is why he deceived Buddha to seek enlightenment by going inside. Buddha was constantly, always meditating. That's him. That's the pose. You see him in a meditation pose, like maybe under a tree or something. Because when you engage in that occultism, you are opening a portal within yourself, your body, your spirit. And so you might start to feel a tingle in your forehead area, and you've opened your occult third eye, which is the portal to the demonic. They're going to start to be able to communicate with you. People start to get visions. Their intuition will become significantly enhanced. And from there, it's just a downward spiral, a rabbit hole that's going to take a person in any which ways. And they're going to start, being interested in the philosophy of these other paths. And again, that's taking you away from the true God.